The Dust Bowl by Ellie Gilbert. What was the Dust Bowl? The Dust Bowl was an ecological and economic disaster that occurred in the Midwest from 1934 to 1940. Dust storms were caused by blowing topsoil that gradually eroded from the farmland. Causes of the Dust Bowl: poor farming techniques. The massive amount of crops needed for World War I caused many farmers to work the land improperly. Overplanting crops to meet the demands of the war, not allowing a rest period between crop cycles during which the topsoil could replenish itself with nutrients, new mechanized farming techniques as a way to increase profits stripped the topsoil because they tilled the earth, causing the topsoil to separate from the rest of the ground. Farmers had to expand their fields to keep up with demand. The natural, drought-resistant grasses native to the prairies were torn up and replaced by wheat, which was not drought-resistant. As a result, the topsoil of the ground gradually eroded, and the soil was no longer fit for farming. Causes of the Dust Bowl, Part 2, Drought and Wind Erosion. The topsoil of the land was blown away, leaving the ground vulnerable and at risk of drought. Little rain fell on the dry prairies, which caused the topsoil to not stick to the ground, and it blew freely around the plains. When the topsoil would swirl throughout the atmosphere in a dust storm, it was called a black blizzard because of the black soil. And Black Sunday was when topsoil from the Midwest blew all the way to Washington, D.C., darkening the sky. Severe drought caused little rainfall, high temperatures, and high winds, which worsened the effects of the Dust Bowl. 90% of the land in North America suffered from moderate to severe desertification. Desertification is a process in which formerly fertile land becomes dry, arid, and unfit for producing crops. These are some pictures of Black Sunday. It occurred on April 14th, 1935. On the upper left, you can see a magazine headline, or a newspaper headline, that says, "The Worst I Ever Seen." On the right is the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., and the sky is blanketed with dust from the Midwest. On the bottom left is a picture from the Oklahoma dust storm that caused Black Sunday, and it shows a man staring at a wall of dust advancing towards him. Health effects of the Dust Bowl. Dust blew throughout the plains, coating everything it touched. People who were caught outside during the dust storm could be suffocated. Dust would pile up on houses thickly enough that the roofs would collapse, crushing the house and injuring the occupants. The dust would clog mechanisms of cars, which led to accidents because of brake failure and engine failure. Breathing in the dust caused lung problems. Houses were poorly sealed, so therefore dust got into all food and clothing. It was literally impossible to escape the dust, so people living on the plains were exposed to the respiratory threat of dust every day. Prolonged dust inhalation caused dust pneumonia, which was a deadly disease, and it was particularly dangerous for those who were elderly, very young, such as babies, or those with a pre-existing breathing issue. Health effects were not limited to just the Midwest, because the dust storms blew throughout the country. These photos show people using leftover gas masks from World War I to protect their throats and lungs from dust. In the top left-hand corner, you can see prairie women using salvaged gas masks, and in the top right-hand corner, the picture shows that even students had to use gas masks while they worked at school because the dust would infiltrate the building and make the students sick. However, others weren't lucky enough to own any gas masks or weren't able to afford to purchase one, and so they had to improvise. These people on the bottom right are wearing flying goggles and wet-soaked rags that they would then tie around the back of their heads, but this didn't offer as much protection as a mask. Solutions and federal aid to the Dust Bowl. Between 1933 and 1935, programs were introduced specifically to help people affected by the Dust Bowl as part of FDR's New Deal. Some of these included the Resettlement Administration, in which the government bought millions of acres of land in the Great Plains and converted it to better uses since it was unfit for farming. The Farm Security Administration, which offered loans to farmers so they could buy land, equipment, and seeds. The Drought Relief Service, in which the government purchased cattle that were at risk of dying from drought. The income from this purchase helped farmers get back on their feet, and the cattle were slaughtered to send to disadvantaged farmers for food. The Soil Conservation Act had farmers being paid by the government to plant fewer crops to prevent a surplus, such as that of after World War I. This also saved the soil, and techniques such as non-till soil helped preserve the topsoil of the land. The end of the Dust Bowl and long-term effects. Heavy rains in the spring of 1940 ended the worst of the Dust Bowl, but people living in states such as Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, and even Colorado suffered from the Dust Bowl for as many as 8 years straight. Improved farming techniques, such as no-till farming, helped restore the soil. No-till farming was a new form of agriculture in which the soil was not turned over, because turning over the soil released the topsoil from the rest of the soil, and it prevented nutrients from staying integrated into the ground. However, permanent ecological damage was done by the Dust Bowl. It substantially reduced the farming value of much of the Midwest, and we can see a lot of the same drought and dryness continue today in the United States. The chart on the right shows which states were hit most severely by the dust storms. In the red is the area with the most severe dust storm damage, which is part of Texas, Colorado, New Mexico, and Oklahoma. The other areas affected were Wyoming, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. So virtually the entire Midwest was severely damaged by the effects of the Dust Bowl.